I'm resident of Collinwood, Jules Sains. That's my buddy Gordon Dymowski. That's my buddy Patrick McCray. We're here to review Battle of the Planet of the Apes. I have questions. Here's my first one, guys. Did this movie have studio interference?
Did it have a studio? I think is the better question. Now, Jewel, I'm gonna turn the sacred scroll on you. This is your favorite of the Planet of the Apes movies, isn't it?
I think it had a lot of potential. Just on, like, when you watch the, okay, when I watched the Planet of the Apes movies, and I don't mean to go off on a tangent, so I apologize in advance. When I watched the Planet of the Apes movies, including this one, I had watched the Planet of the Apes movies post all the Mad Max movies, post the first three.
Okay.
And so when I saw the fourth movie that we covered, and then when we did this movie, when I saw this movie when I was a kid, I'm expecting like something sort of like the second Mad Max movie to a weird degree, but that's what I was expecting.
I love it. I would love to see that movie.
But now that didn't happen. But I had a high I don't know why.
Well, you do know that this Planet of the Apes movie was made 10 years before the second Mad Max movie. Just want to put that out there.
I know. So I don't know why I had that expectation as a kid. But
school buses misappropriated.
Yeah, but I did. And I also thought, too, that there's another movie I had watched prior to this when I was a kid, was the movie Glory, the war movie Glory. And I was expecting more of a literal war, a battle, at least.
Was there an emptiness in that place where you expected Glory to be?
Well, it's not that it was emptiness. It's just like, I thought this movie
was there a hole?
Was there a hole?
Yeah, that's what we're trying to say.
I would say
we got you. He's getting good. We got you.
Oh my god.
Well, to answer your question, Jewel, there actually was a studio. It was called Universal. And the interesting thing is I did a little bit of research after watching this movie. Even though it's credited to Paul Den, he was not the original writer. They hired the writers from the Omega Man.
The Omega Man, yeah, the Corringtons.
And then they just didn't. They had never seen any of the Apes movies, and so they brought Paul Den in, and it shows that there's like a lot of too many cooks in writing the script. And by writing, I think they just had, if they had magnetic poetry, they were just like throwing it up on the wall, or I think they're doing like William F. Burroughs style cut up.
You know, something, as a fancy lad myself, something that I just treasure about this movie. It was an absurdity that I only know this time as I actually watched the end of the movie. And it was this. This is a bloody, rip-snorting, manly war movie. Your two heroes side by side facing down an army with just a few rifles between them and the forces of evil coming down on them, and they're sweating, pumping testosterone. And who are those two men? Roddy McDowall and Paul Williams. I love this movie for that. Imagine if they were not in makeup. They were just in whatever they wore to the set that day. And we saw the rehearsal. For how ludicrous that would have looked. Wonderfully ludicrous.
Yeah, I think it was cool seeing Roddy McDowall in this movie. That's all well and good.
Well, it's cool seeing Roddy McDowall in any movie. That's
right.
Not what I'm saying. He's not exactly going to be your star of a war movie.
Right. But I just think that I'm not trying to blame writers or anything. Usually I do. I just think, I guess my question is, why didn't they get anybody who wrote any of the original movies?
Well, when you look at let's look at who wrote it. The first movie was Rod Serling and Michael, I forget the last name, but the second writer was a blacklisted um, writer who had just come back to work. Now, Serling at this point, he's off to Night Gallery, and the other one, they're both jobbing writers. So the second one is Mort Abrams, who is the producer, and Paul Den. So they do Beneath. Then Escape is Paul Den. Conquest is Paul Den. And this movie is Paul Den, but with people starting with it before. And the
Paul
thing
Dane was the Gordon Russell
right
of these movies.
And the thing, Joel, is that it doesn't script writing back then was seen as a job. You don't necessarily, it wasn't, and writers were considered basically you're just there to throw a script together and not make it brilliant.
You might as well be a gaffer or a grip. You're a technician.
Yeah, if you're lucky, you're a Billy Wilder who not only has great writing partners, but you have enough clout to say, no, you ain't changing a word on this script.
Yeah.
Or you're a Raymond Chandler who's like, okay, Kane's dialogue doesn't work on the page, but I'll make it work here. And he's working with Billy Wilder and getting drunk. So it's kind of easy from this standpoint to say, well, why didn't they do this? And I would have done X, Y, Z. Well, first off, this ain't your movie. And secondly, unless you have a time machine, you can't go back and change history.
No.
Can't you? Joel Sane can. He's going to project himself, his soul, with the I Ching back into my body in 1972. And
you weren't even born in 72, Patrick.
Yeah, I was born in 71. So Joel projects himself back and he's trapped in this infant.
Oh.
That's funny. Patrick's breastfeeding again. I can't figure out why.
Oh man. Patrick's pants are wet.
Why did we say that now? I mean, that's a holdover from now.
Oh my god! I think some of the scenes in this movie are good. I don't think the movie as a whole is just awful, but
Joel, I wish you were the one with the hookah because I would ask what you're smoking and can I have some?
That this was a weird. They were going to have what do they call it? It's not corporate placement. It's what do they do when you have a product placement? Pillsbury paid a lot of money to get product placement into this movie because they were going to have the actor and the voice. He's ruined it. It was a shaggy dog. It was going to be a good one, and he's wearing a shaggy dog in his shirt. Pillsbury paid a lot of money to get product placement in this. Yes, it's A&W. Yeah, I know, Corey. I know.
Yeah.
Product placement.
I hope you're getting paid by them. Anyway, Dana Carey got paid by Mug. Product placement from Pillsbury for this. They had the guy who did the voice of the Pillsbury, Poppin' Fresh, was going to do the Gorilla General because he was already Aldo. Aldo.
Watch this later, Joel. You'll get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See,
okay. What was this is going to be a weird question. What was you guys' expectation going into this and when you first went to go watch it?
That it would be good.
Yeah.
That it would be comprehensible. That it would be watchable, and not just sort of strangely depressing. It was more watchable this time than any other time I've seen it. I'll say some nice things about this. Paul Williams is great. Who is it? Ed Ames or somebody who plays Nicodemus? The
Lou Ayres.
Lou Ayres. Lou Ayres is terrific. And it's the tomahawk. Lou Ayres is really good. I think that there are individual pieces of dialogue that really work. And the thing that, because Conquest was so violent and had so many parents groups complaining that they said, even though we got a movie schedule called Battle for the Planet of the Apes, we have to try and make it something more. And I think that Roddy McDowall and the cast handle all of the stuff involving young Cornelius, I think, really well. I think that's a kid character who works, and Roddy McDowall is believable as a very loving and compassionate father who himself was orphaned, and so he wants to try and, not just be the Armando, because Armando was, I think, probably a really good substitute parent for Caesar. But I really think that all of that stuff works, and the you killed my son, you Klingon bastard kind of stuff really, really, really was very moving. I mean, the scene where Cornelius goes to tell his son that he's leaving on the trip and all of that, I always find that pretty emotionally moving. It's frankly rare in movies that you see a father, I think, portrayed as strong and intelligent and compassionate, and yet having a sense of boundaries, and kind, without being a pushover. And I really believe in what he's trying to, the sort of leader he's trying to groom his son into being. And I think that serves as a really good, I don't know, metaphor, but model for the sort of future that he wants to create everywhere. I believe Roddy McDowall as Caesar in this, as a guy who, on one hand, very much has these, draconic rules of how the apes should be interacting and so on and so forth, and pretty hardcore about that stuff, and yet is intelligent enough to be able to, not be mad at his son for the, all of the classroom business, and so, and his son kind of having a mouth on him now and then. That all worked, and Natalie Trundy is his wife. I guess Lisa. I buy that. That really works. With the exception of the sort of goofy goggles and Halloween mask sort of head caps and so on that they're wearing. Severin Darden's a really interesting actor. He's a Second City actor. He helped create Second City, as Gordon was talking about earlier. And on the cab ride over from on the way to the studio today. And Severin Darden is a good actor. And so seeing him with that dialogue, because Severin Darden knows how to play an opposite. The more sort of frightening the line, the silkier he is in his delivery, and that's all very intentional. That gives Culp a lot of texture, that and the makeup. So I have endless things to say about everything, but endless rotten things to say about this movie. But it's really low hanging fruit, which is what apes eat. And I think it's important also to talk about the good stuff in the movie. And I really feel for the J. Lee Thompson, the director, because that guy he was a lot like Jack Hill, in that he was almost too good at taking a little bit, the same shot of the treehouse exploding, but does it from different angles and stuff like that. He was very good at taking very little and making as much movie as he could out of it. I mean, he has a Jeep and a school bus, and thanks to a lot of smoke, and not just this, he's able to make something very as feature worthy as he can with the restrictions that Fox put on him, because they were getting ready to make the TV series. So, they were just almost getting this out of the way. So those are good things about it.
Yeah, I mean, this is This is the same guy who brought us the original Cape Fear.
Guns of Navarone.
Mm-hmm.
And he also brought us one of my favorite movies from the 80s. It's terrible. It's a terrible movie, but I love it anyway. It's a hell of a lot of fun. That's King Solomon's Mines, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
With Jerry Goldsmith's maybe one of his 5 best scores.
Have you ever seen the movie Congo?
Yes.
Does Ernie Hudson's character, is he sort of a Alan Quartermain character?
Whose character?
Ernie Hudson, Zedmore.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how we got on talking about Congo. Oh yeah, I get it. Congo's about apes, but maybe I don't know. I noticed how how Jewel has not asked me my opinion of this movie yet.
What's your
Gordon, Patrick? In his defense, I've been talking like I was vaccinated with the phonograph needle.
What's your
But at some point, Patrick, usually Jewel will say like, "Thank you." We'll like address you and then go, "Hey, Gordon, what did you think?" And that kind of, let's see if we can get Gordon and Patrick to fight about something.
I don't.
Gordon, what's your opinion?
What's my opinion of this movie? Well, how do I express this politely but honestly? This movie is a mess.
If you ate a pencil and paper, what would happen?
This movie.
You would defecate a better movie than this, a better screenplay than this.
Yeah, this really has the feeling of. It doesn't have a feeling like there is a script and somebody filled in. It felt like there were several ideas. Because you've got, when you look at this movie, you've got so many ideas at play. You've got the human beings and apes living together in a village shortly after the riots. But wait, there is also a nuclear war. But wait, there's also a rival faction that wants to bring things back to the original. But wait, there's also an internal dissension within the city. Plus, everything is being told in flashback for something that is completely unrelated. So it really feels like any one of these plot points would be a movie.
Yeah.
You could do an internal battle between humans and apes figuring out how to get along. There's one movie. The Aldo subplot is another movie.
It's a movie right there.
The humans wanting to attack, that's another movie.
Yeah.
And it really feels, and looking at some of the trailers, they were advertising this as the last Apes movie, and there's a good reason why, because this movie sucks on toast. I mean, this isn't even there are good moments, but it doesn't. There's no logic to it. Like, why do we need the lawgiver sequences? Except, oh well, John Huston, the teenagers are into a 70-year-old director of the Maltese Falcon, so let's just throw him in ape makeup.
That this is like Arthur P. Jacobs reliving the movie The Producers.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get out of this thing? I'm going to be stuck with these apes forever. I'll make a movie so bad. Because the funny thing is, all the plot points that you mentioned, Gordon, not only are good movie fodder, but the film not only combines them all, but manages to make them all kind of tepid and far less interesting than they should be. Mm-hmm. The one thing about the mutants that I do like is that we do see, even in the skull caps and everything else, we do see them kind of laying the groundwork for what we will find in Beneath the Planet of the Apes. That's okay. I'll give him a point for that.
Ironically, one of the deleted scenes was that the character of Mendez becomes governor, and it's hinted that they're not going to use the bomb, and they actually show the bomb from Beneath the Planet of the Apes.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've seen stills. I've seen stills of that. I'm convinced I have somewhere.
Mhm.
Here's a question, because I didn't watch the series on Fox. Could they have just saved a lot of the good plot points that Gordon was talking about and used that for the series?
Nope. Series was a
No,
completely different thing.
the series is on the West Coast.
Uh,
It's like 1,000 years after this. It's at a really, but the humans are still talking. It's a really weird midpoint between this movie and the stuff in 39, 78.
oh wow. So is
Yeah, yeah. See, Joel, it's I hate to sound like Mr. Old Guy, but back then they
Here we
didn't
go.
have like this established continuity. You know, it's much like
Continuity.
it's much like the Halloween series here. They're scrambling to create a continuity that never was in the first place.
It's like the continuity of the James Bond films at this point.
Right. Jewel, there is even a cartoon um of the Planet of the Apes. And I forget that one of the actors, I think it's the Caesar's right hand guy, the black guy. I forget the actor's name. But he actually did the voices of one of the astronauts in the cartoon.
It's Austin Stoker.
Yeah, Austin Stoker.
Yeah, yeah. He was Bill Franklin.
So
Oh.
I would suggest this is your homework, Joel. After we watch all the movies, track down the TV series, watch all of that, watch all of the cartoon, and you create the timeline.
Oh, good luck. The
So
TV series had a few good episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were largely wretched, but it had a few good episodes. And as the bad guy general, I think Ursus was it Ursus or something like that.
Right.
Was played by Mark Leonard,
Mm-hmm.
Derek, and he's very good. He really helps hold that series together.
cool. Okay, what's this is gonna be? What's your least favorite thing about this movie, other than it exists, obviously? Uh, and what's your favorite thing about this movie? It's so hard.
Tell us, Joel, what is your favorite thing about this movie and your least favorite thing about this movie? If we're gonna burn, you're gonna burn too, dude.
You know what? Here's the thing. I think sometimes, I don't. No, my God, where do I even begin? I love franchises. I know Gordon doesn't. I know you don't, Gordon. I appreciate that.
I just don't like the word franchise.
Oh, okay.
Like a chicken chain or something.
My favorite scene in this movie is the end. And I mean that not in a sarcastic way.
Because you can go.
No,
Back.
I don't mean that in a sarcastic way. I mean that it felt in a weird, fucked up way in this movie. It felt complete. As crazy as that sounds, it didn't make me feel like I was ripped off. Even though I wanted more of a battle war type movie, and I didn't get that, I wasn't going to like shun them for what they attempted, I guess. My least favorite thing is the mess that this movie is. It is a mess. You're both right. It's just, it feels at times all over the place, and it makes you want to scream at times. But here's the thing: I've seen worse movies. Again, I went to go see Hostel in theaters. So.
I like Hostel. I like Hostel a lot, and I like Hostel 2 even more. I wrote a good essay in one of the Monster Serial books about Hostel, or Hostel 2.
Oh, is it known as Hostel 2 Electric Boogaloo?
I wish. And if someone had suggested Eli Roth, Hostel 2 is a comedy. I'm really convinced of it. It's a very brutal comedy. It's a comedy. It's got a lot of intentionally laugh out loud sequences, and And Heather Matarazzo just looks great. I love her. She's terrific.
All right, what's you guys' least favorite movie least favorite scene and favorite scene? Gordon?
Ooh, that's a toughie. I think, ironically, my favorite scenes are the ones where it's right after Cornelius has fallen off of the tree and Caesar is tending to his son, because as much as I'm not a big fan of killing kids off for dramatic purposes, there is a kind of there is a charm there, and it's it kind of it's a good reminder of what happened at the end of Conquest, when Caesar says, even though we're not human, we can afford to be humane.
Yeah.
And it would be very tempting for him to do that. My least favorite, everything else, because it feels like, it really feels like it's maybe one of the few even though it was meant to be the last movie of the series, it really feels like a cash in. Like, yeah, let's just throw all this stuff together. It's not even made from the better parts of the other movies. It's when the first 7 minutes you get a 3-minute recap and 4 minutes of someone on horseback, and they don't even do anything interesting with the guy on horseback, you know it's going to suck on toast.
Well, you get a Leonard Rosenman score, which sounds like something from the 3-chord ukulele songbook. Not very inventive scores. He also did the score to Star Trek 4, which is just bad, and the score to Lord of the Rings, the real one, the Ralph Bakshi one, which is terrible. Yeah, and then accompany that by some poor schmuck on horseback in full ape makeup. Just feel for everyone involved.
Yeah, this movie is a mess and a disaster.
Leonard Rosenman is the composer you hire when studio tracks are too expensive. Just generically, when the KPM library is too expensive to throw in there, you get him. He is the big lots of composers, and I normally I really don't talk, shit excessively about people. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but one of my least favorite, and I think least versatile and original film composers. He's like, he goes to Arthur Jacobs' office and says, "I got your music." And Artie's there going, "Okay, great. And what happens next in the melody?" He says, "No, that's it." What do you mean? That's the whole score to the whole movie. We're just going to repeat that over and over again. Artie said, "Well, it's cheap. We're just going to loop it."
I have a weird question. I don't know if you guys will be able to answer it or not. When Fox,
Jewel, keep your personal life out of this. You're on YouTube.
when Fox, like, I guess, bought the rights to Planet of the Apes to do the series, did they do it for the sole purpose just to do a series? Did they have intent to do this movie?
No.
No, the story is, sorry about it, Patrick.
No, please.
They licensed one novel, which is a French novel called Monkey Planet, or Planet of the Apes. And basically, the story is an astronaut goes to a planet where there's apes, and it's the similar social structure. The orangutans are science. The chimps are the chimps do this. So for the one novel, and it had been in development for years. They bring Charlton Heston on board. They had Rod Serling doing the screenplay, and this was one of their desperation moves, because for years up until this point and somewhat afterward, they had bomb after bomb after bomb. And the original director, Franklin Schaffner, didn't do all that much. Like, he was known as like a journeyman. Like, yeah, hire him, he points the camera, he shoots, he moves on. But the movie was such a phenomenal hit that it was like, oh, we got to do more. So they do Beneath. They go write the script. They go to Charlton Heston, who's like, nope, don't want to do it. And it wasn't out of animosity. It's like, you do a movie. He did his job. He had fun, but he didn't want to necessarily come back. So they go back and forth. Okay, just two things. I only want to work so long, and I want you to kill me off at the end of the movie. Spoiler, they do that.
Yeah.
So that, and then that leads to Escape, where it's like, okay, they have less of a budget. And the thing you do with science fiction, if you don't have that much of a budget, you do it contemporary because it saves on sets and production.
Once again, Star Trek 4.
Mm-hmm. And then, okay, you've got this Escape was light and fluffy, but the tenor of the times is getting violent and dark. And luckily, Fox had some property out in Century City that looks vaguely futuristic. So they say, okay, we're going to film Conquest out there. And, that was successful. And they probably thought, okay, well, let's do one more. We got the rights. A bunch of this, I'm willing to bet they filmed out of the Fox Ranch, which is now a public park in California. They've got all the props in that. They don't need to spend a lot of money. They probably should have spent more on getting a decent script. And at this point, they're just like, okay, fine, whatever. They still have the rights because Arthur P. Jacobs died, I think, within several weeks. I don't know if he died before or after this movie was released, but he passed. Like, this was his last movie ever. But then there was like, okay, well, we've got the rights to this. What do we keep? How do we keep it up? Let's do a TV show. So they do the TV show, which is later stripped and syndicated and shown on a young network executive named Brandon Tartikoff. Shows them on the 3:30 movie on ABC Channel 7 in Chicago and calls it Gorilla My Dreams Week. And I should know, I was there. I saw it. So that makes me a better human being than you, Jewel. And then they do a Saturday morning cartoon, which was like on for a year for like an abnormal amount of time. And then it fades into history until a young man named Tim Burton picks it up in the early 2000s, but we're not going to go there.
Yeah. That's interesting. Trying to think how important, for those who haven't seen Planet of the Apes, any of the movies, how we know Charlton Heston's importance, but how important was it for Roddy McDowall to keep returning?
It was a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
I think more than his face wasn't in it. He got to do, Roddy McDowall really got to do some shockingly good acting with less and less worthwhile material.
Mm-hmm.
So good for him. But, I think it was one of those things where Roddy, got to sneak in opportunities to keep his acting chops, strong. And he did. And, and he has that unique voice. And it's his voice in a lot of ways without, being like Alan Sue's or something, is so kind of effeminate that it works, I think, extremely well with that heavy makeup. It just creates this really interesting scenario. So, yeah, I think, it was good for Roddy. And, I'm sure Roddy bought some cameras and maybe a pool or something like that. And, yeah, good, 8 or 9 years for Roddy McDowall.
Yeah, keep in mind, in between episodes of in between Planet of the Apes films, he did things like he did a guest shot on Columbo.
Yeah.
Oh, he was working. He was always working.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think, because he, at this point, he had done so much, because he was a child actor. And so, I mean, he also did Lord Love a Duck, which is a really, really interesting film. And that's the name of it, Lord Love a Duck. It's not the Jules Zane story, people, so don't go there.
It's not a man-mallard romance.
Correct. And
get those
Patrick, I'm
golden.
surprised you haven't heard of it.
Who, him or me?
You.
Me? I've heard of it. I've never
Oh.
seen it. I'd like to.
I've never seen it or heard of it. It sounds interesting. I have no further questions. Is there anything you guys want to add about this movie?
It's like we're giving deposition. I'll talk about my favorite and least favorite. My least favorite's the battle stuff. I mean, the actual title of the movie being justified is just, I talk about them trying to do as much as they could with very little material, and that's true. Still doesn't mean that they were able to do something great out of it. So just the lackluster, who cares quality of that. What do I like most? I mean, all the stuff dealing with the death of Caesar and so on, I think's great. And when Lisa and the human, say, maybe we shouldn't tell him how bad this situation really is with his son. They kind of, try to deceive Caesar so that he'll at least have a little more positive time in those final moments. I think that was very touching. And I got to admit, Paul Williams is a lot of fun in the film, and of course he required no makeup. That's what he actually looks like.
That's the other thing I liked about this film, Paul Williams, because he's a well-needed.
I like Paul Williams in this.
Yeah, he's a well-needed. He brings joy to a film that is relatively joyless.
He's having a lot of fun, and he's playing the characters. He's playing the Stokes in this.
Mm-hmm.
I do have one question about Tim Burton's movie.
Okay. It's on Tubi, so you can watch it for yourself, Joel. I don't encourage you to do that. I'm just letting you know. If you want to watch it for yourself, you can do that. But ask your question.
If he wants to get into cutting, he can do that. But I don't know if it's
Oh my god! So, oh my god, so wrong. Anyway, my question is this: a certain gentleman who starred in the first movie was in the Tim Burton remake as an ape.
Yeah, and the irony is, he's the one who's talking about the danger of guns. Oh, look, it's irony.
Yeah, it's the beginning of Tim Burton's fascination with taking a familiar, a familiar, I hate to say franchise, but a familiar material, familiar property, kind of do the whole wink, hey, get this, make it quirky. If he's, possibly cast either Johnny Depp and or Helena Bonham Carter, and just run it into the freaking ground.
Yeah. That's all. That's all the questions. Yeah, that's all the questions I have. Is there anything you guys want to add about this abomination that we talked about today?
It's I'll say this. If you watch any 10 minutes of this film, it's not that bad. If you watch any more than that, it's far worse than you can imagine.
And probably the best way to view this film is to find highlight clips on YouTube.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. It is too. That's the sad part about this movie. I just feel, to close this out, I just feel this movie should have been the one that topped them all. It really should have, in my opinion. But that's just, I know that.
Well, I think by this point, nice. I mean, at this point, you start to get into diminishing returns, and I've always believed that if you know when to quit, you should quit, and it's better to have something where you have a small number, but one that isn't quite there, than if they had kept going and going and going and going. Like, you really can't end on Conquest because it's just, even with the additional ending, it's so dark and so dire. You don't want your final film to be, oh God, we're heading towards an apocalypse. Just like, people watching this podcast don't want to see like, oh, okay, yeah, it's, man, this podcast really sucks. Gordon and Patrick are not happy.
You're fine, Jewel. You're fine.
Yeah,
the piss out
nobody
of
wants to do that, Joel.
Oh my God.
I do think, yeah, this is one of those where you kind of go, yeah, I'm kind of glad, even though I don't like the film, I'm kind of glad it ended here and then just went to TV and animation versus, doing another film after this and another film, because it would have just been real downward slope.
Oh, I mean, I don't even want to think about what the next movie would have been to follow. Like the movie that would have followed this, that would make us look back at Battle and say, "Oh, that was the golden time."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I have to go take a bath.
It probably would have been like, something like, I don't know, Spring Break on the Planet of the Apes.
I love that. Ape girls versus human girls playing beach volleyball.
Yeah.
That's a fun movie.
Yeah, gratuitous cameo by Frankie Avalon in ape makeup.
Okay. Divine on the Planet of the Apes.
That would work. Directed by John Waters.
Oh, a John Waters Planet of the Apes movie is one of the best combinations of words I've ever heard.
Yeah. All right, guys. First of all, thank you for discussing this movie with me. Tomorrow night we're doing Planet of the Apes, the first movie,
Apes,
the classic, the
first,
original,
the best.
Yeah. Charlton Heston. Link to Gordon Dymowski's Amazon page is going to be in the description box and his website. Link to the Collinsport Historical Society and Patrick McCray's Dark Shadows Day book about is going to be in the description box. Gentlemen, you have a great night. Take care.
Bye.
Good night.